over to Santosh, who is going to be taking over and moderating the session this afternoon. I'll take a back seat. Thank you, Santosh. Over to you.
Thank you for taking the back seat, Daddy. Dr. George Chandy is the director and CEO of the Believers Church Medical College Hospital, an old friend of the family. I know George's brother Reggie a lot better. I've been singing with his choir. Don't do it anymore, but for many, many years with Reggie Chandy. Dr. George, you probably know that my family and I, my wife and 3 children, we had COVID last month. It was mild COVID, but nevertheless, we did test positive. And it's God's grace that brought us through. We experienced his healing hand. There was an ocean of calm in our home through that period of quarantine. But we have emerged victorious, but with a lot of questions also. And now that the vaccine is out, as my dad said, this is a very timely presentation from you, but so many questions, Dr. Chandy. Can we still get COVID if we get vaccinated? What has gone into that vaccine? How effective is it going to be? How soon will we be protected? Who should get it? Who should not get it? Should I get it since I had COVID? It seems to have been developed so soon. We hear that vaccines normally take years and years of research and trials. So is it safe? So I'm going to hand it over to you, Dr. George. We'll ask for questions, and for everyone else, type in your questions in the Zoom chat, and I'll moderate that discussion. Please mute your mics. Ravi, if you can just mute everyone's mics and make a few of us co-hosts so that we can unmute when we need to. Dr. George Chandy, over to you.
Santosh and Ken, thank you so much for this privilege to talk about what is very timely. Currently, we in Kerala are going through the phase which I had predicted earlier. It looked as though we were doing everything right. So each time I would come from Vellore in Tamil Nadu, everybody will stay far away from me, saying that you're the infected guy, you're coming in with a lot of COVID. But what happened is what I knew would happen is what's happening now. We have nearly 7,000 patients every day, new cases. We have 11% of our population getting infected. So we are just at the phase where you were in Bangalore about 6 months ago. So our recovery will also be accordingly delayed. Currently, we're still seeing fairly sick patients coming into our hospital. So for Santosh and the family, I'm so glad that it was a milder episode. What we do not know today, even after so much of research over a year all around the world, is why do some people get sicker? Is it because of the quantum of the virus? Is it because of the host, the nature of the host? Is it because of the virulence of the organism? We thought that the older people, those who have comorbidities, are the ones who are likely to have more problems, but it is not always very true. So God's grace, Santosh and the family, I'm glad you are well. Some people are not that fortunate. And even as we speak, I have 3 patients in our ICU who are not doing that well. There was one patient whom we had to refer for a lung transplant last week. So things are not as rosy as we hoped it would be. And therefore, we have to find a way to prevent this infection. What was ideal would have been if over 60 to 70% of our people got infected, and then the others develop what is called a herd immunity. That has happened in some places. Dharavi, for example, in Mumbai, it has happened. But across the country, there are large pockets where there's not been the infection as we thought it would. It has not spread that much. And that's the problem for us here in Kerala. It is still spreading. We've not got the herd immunity. So therefore, more and more patients are getting affected. So therefore, finding the vaccine became extremely important. And the world went about it with great passion. Now, Santosh mentioned, normally it takes ages to get a vaccine out. But people worked extremely hard, shortened time periods. And that's how within a year we have the vaccines. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about, the facts that we need to know. Now, what is a vaccine? I'm just talking about the basics. It's a suspension of live or killed microorganisms. Or you would take some portion of these agents and then you present it to the potential host. And always what happens is the body responds. Sometimes it reacts. But when it responds appropriately, we are able to prevent the specific disease caused by that organism. So, for example, the COVID vaccine contains the COVID virus or its portions, and that brings about an immune response when you inject a small part of that into our body. That is what vaccine is all about. And immunization is the process of becoming immune, or rather, the process of being protected against the disease. So why do we use vaccines? Vaccines can prevent infectious diseases, and the good examples, and we are excellent at this in our country. Measles, polio, hepatitis B, influenza, many other diseases we've been able to prevent by using vaccines. So ours is probably the largest vaccination program in the world. Now, when most people in a community are either have got infected and cleared the virus or infection, or if we are able through vaccination to build immunity, this is called herd or indirect or the population immunity. So the whole population becomes immune to a certain infection. Bill Gates a long time ago had mentioned that the next world war will probably be fought not by artillery. It will maybe fought via a virus. And we never thought this is going to hit us like this. Now, when a lot of people have immunity, this also indirectly protects people who have not been vaccinated. For example, the current guidelines is that people below the age of 18 should not be vaccinated. But if 70% of the population, 80% of the population gets this immunity, it will cover our young ones as well. How does vaccine work? Vaccines reduce the risk of infection by actually it is training our immune system. I'm sure you know what an immune system is. It's what God has given us in order to protect us from pathogens, viruses, bacteria, because otherwise they all try to get into our system. But it is this immunity that prevents them from overtaking our systems. So how does this happen? Within our body, we are able to produce what are called antibodies. And some of our cells are trained to identify the pathogens. And they help in producing antibodies. And the antibodies are basically proteins produced by the body to neutralize or to destroy toxins. Or they might even destroy the organism itself. Antibodies tend to be disease specific. There are two types of immunity. Okay, one is the active immunity, the other is the passive immunity. So when you are exposed to a disease organism or an organism that causes illness, it tends to trigger the immune system to produce antibodies. I mentioned that earlier. So this can be natural. That means because you are exposed to an organism, can produce antibodies, or it can be introduced by a vaccine. So you either introduce a weakened form of the disease organism and or a killed part of the organism and help the body to develop immunity. What is passive immunity? It's when the person is actually given the antibodies. Okay, so you're not encouraging the immune system to produce antibodies, you're actually giving the antibodies. And the good example is how a newborn baby acquires passive immunity from its mother through the placenta. Or a person can also get passive immunity through an antibody containing blood products, which are called the immune globulins, which may be given when you need immediate protection. And this is what you heard about for a long time, about the convalescent plasma. That means those who recovered from COVID, we take their plasma, see whether they have enough antibodies, and give that to a patient who gets the infection. Now, this is the next few slides are going to be a little complex, but I'll try and make it simple. Again, the active immunity is when the antigen, either the vaccine or the infection, comes into the body. Over days or weeks, it tries to influence or affect the person, infect the person. But because of the response, there is recovery. And you must remember, the body has the ability to remember. There are memory cells. So that's called an anamnestic response. That means, once you have been challenged, you may remember that this infection is coming back again, and the body may be able to respond. Passive immunity, I am repeating what I said earlier, is that serum antibodies from an immune individual is administered to an uninfected person. And then there is recovery. There's been a lot of controversy over this particular, what I'm going to talk to you about. How do you develop a vaccine? And anyone who's developed a vaccine will tell you that normally it takes years to get this done. But the world came together, and the scientists, the research workers did very well to produce the vaccine within a year. And that's why there's so much controversy. Initially, you do preclinical trials on mice, on animals. Okay? And then you come to 3 phases of a vaccine development, that is making sure that clinical trials are done to make sure that there are no adverse reactions. I got muted a bit, sorry. There are 3 phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. In the first phase, you take a smaller group of healthy volunteers and decide for yourself through a trial in phase 1 to see whether the vaccine is safe. Does it seem to work? Are there any major side effects? And what about the dose that you have to give? So for all this, the Food and Administration, Drug Administration, FDA, has set clear rules, and the researchers test it in phase 1, 2, and 3. So in phase 2, you take many more volunteers, several hundred volunteers, and look at what are the common side effects and how do the volunteers, their immune systems, how does it respond? Then comes the phase 3, hundreds or thousands of volunteers, because the more people you test, the surer you are that this vaccine is safe and this vaccine is effective. How do people who get the vaccine and people who do not, how do you compare the two? Is the vaccine safe? Is it effective? What are the most common side effects? So the problem with the vaccine that was developed in India called Covaxin is that people said, you've not done enough of phase 3 studies to say that it is very, very safe. Okay, is this clear? Just to show you in a diagrammatic fashion, you have the preclinical phase where you test animals, the mice, and then you get into human trials where in phase 1 you evaluate the safety, you look for the dosages and watch out for side effects, small numbers of people. In phase 2, larger number of people testing effectiveness, making sure the vaccine is safe. And in phase 3, you confirm effectiveness, monitor side effects, compare to other modalities that may be available, collect more information. And then when you go into phase 4, you've already administered the vaccine, you try to get more and more information after the approval. Look for risk, benefits, and use, so that ultimately you want to do the maximum good for the maximum number of people and keep the possible side effects and problems to the minimum. This is a busy slide, but I'll try and make it simple for you. This is to try and tell you about the types of vaccines that are available. Live attenuated, which means the virus that you take, you make it milder, but it is a live virus. But you keep it, bring it to a level where it does not cause the disease. But it will help to get a response from the host. This is what you do in measles, rubella, mumps, yellow fever, and smallpox. Attenuated live virus. Then you have the whole inactivated virus, where actually it's a dead virus, but some of them can bring a strong antibody response, like in influenza, rabies, and hepatitis A. Or you can use a subunit, a protein derived from the virus, where the side effects may be less, but the immunogenicity may be less as well. You use that in the influenza vaccine. Or you can have the recombinant vaccine, where the host cell is used to express the antigen. This is what you do in hepatitis B. Or you can use what are called peptides. Those of you who do biochemistry know what are peptides. They are synthetically produced fragments. And you can develop this very fast. COVID-19, some of the vaccines are in development in this way. Or you can do a replicating or non-replicating viral vector, where the pathogen is expressed on another safe virus. Okay, you put part of this COVID virus into another virus. Now that's what was done for Ebola. Or you can use a nucleic acid, DNA or RNA, which is part of the virus, and then you get a vaccine out of that, so that one of the methods in COVID-19 vaccine development is this one. So what about immunity in COVID-19? Now, I've told you all the theory, and we're coming into specifics about how we people, researchers, experts around the world developed COVID-19 vaccine. Can I go ahead? Because you can ask me all the questions at the end, okay? When the coronavirus, COVID-19 is one of the coronaviruses. If you look at this picture, you will find that the virus is entering the body, and the important part is what is mentioned there as the spike protein. The spike protein. That connects with a receptor in the cell called the ACE2 receptor, and then enters into the cell. Okay, can you see that picture? And once it gets into the cell, it begins to replicate, and it gets translated into proteins, and more viruses are formed. So what you see here, again, you don't need to get into the details of this, is the way in which the body responds with what are called T helper cells, the B cells, and there is a way in which the body responds when the virus comes into the body. So when you look at the types of coronavirus vaccines and the approaches that they have used, the first one that you see here is the DNA and the RNA, where you have the BioNTech and the Moderna, and these are the ones that are now being used in the United States of America. So it's a new technology where they've used the DNA or the RNA molecules, which will, having been taken, it teaches our immune system to target viral proteins. So this is a design which is faster. And that's how one of the reasons why we got this never done before, and there are no previously licensed vaccine. And this is why there is so much of discussion and talk about this, because this particular methodology has been used for the first time in the world. The second column that you see is a live attenuated, which is done before, which is a weakened version of the actual virus. It helps in stimulating a good response from the host. You may not be able to use this for patients who have cancer, for example, immunocompromised patients. Existing examples, as I mentioned earlier, is measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, and the two vaccines that are now available are called Codagenics and Indian Immunologicals. The third column is the inactivated virus, which is the Covaxin, which is the one under a lot of fire. I know this gentleman, Dr. Ella, who is the head of this particular laboratory, set up an excellent place in Hyderabad and helped us a lot in producing hepatitis B vaccines at a very, very minimal cost. So his team has developed this. It's an inactivated vaccine and uses the whole virus after it has been killed, either with heat or chemicals or both. So this is very safe because the virus is already dead. But it may not be as effective as the live virus. Now, this is a two-edged sword. If you use a virus which is attenuated, live but attenuated, there will always be the argument, can it relive again to cause problems for us? While that won't happen with a dead virus. But we need to know how effective it is, how much response will the host get. Then you come to the part where the subunits have been used. So it uses pieces of the virus surface to focus on the immune system, may not stimulate as good a response as you want, but you've already used it for pertussis, hepatitis B, and human papillomavirus. And the two vaccines of this nature, one is Novavax and the other is called AdaptVac. Finally, coming to Covishield, which is the one that is now available in India. It's the developed by the Oxford Group along with the Serum Institute of India. Approach, this is you use a viral vector, takes a harmless virus, uses it to deliver viral genes to build immunity. And these live viruses, as I said before, tends to elicit a stronger immune response. I took this vaccine 3 days ago, and had a fairly strong response in terms of the myalgia I had, the feverishness that I had. It was my immune system responding. So it is important to pick a viral vector that is safe, which is what they have done in this case, and it's called Covishield. So just to summarize again, live vaccines use a weakened or attenuated form of the germ that causes the disease, or there are inactivated vaccines that use the killed version of the germ that seems to be safer. So that is Covaxin, which is an inactivated virus. Now, the viral vector vaccines that I told you about, to just go over that again, the gene for the pathogen is inserted into a different virus which is safe. You can see that picture there, where the spike gene of the coronavirus is put into a otherwise harmless virus. And this safe virus serves as a platform, or what is called a vector, to deliver the protein which will then trigger the immune response in the host. So the safe virus is injected as a vaccine so that the body then responds. The nucleic acid vaccines, which are being used in the United States, for example, the BioNTech and Moderna, instead of the virus, they use a protein antigen, and which enters the nucleus, gets translated for expression of protein. This new technology where this sort of vaccine is coming into the world for the first time. So this just shows you normally what happens. The preclinical phase can take up to a year. The phase 1 can take another year. Phase 2, about 2 years. Phase 3. So the whole thing together often takes 5 to 6 to 7 years. And that is why a lot of people are upset and worried about the speed at which these vaccines have been produced, and wondering, are they safe enough for humankind? Will it cause other problems? Okay, and what was done in the case of COVID-19, the vaccine development was done very quickly, and the permissions were given because of the need to save humankind from this infection. So just to enumerate some of the vaccines that are there, the Covishield, the Covaxin, Zycov-D, Biological E, Minvax, the Genova Biopharmaceuticals HGCO19, Sputnik is from Russia, and the 2-vector vaccine. Now quickly to just try and share with you what you should mention to your vaccination provider. The government has called us all beneficiaries, and you probably know that they have said that initially the vaccines available will be given to all healthcare workers because they are in the front line. The next group will be all those above the age of 50. And then once that is completed, they will make it available to everyone. So we have to be very clear when we get the vaccine or ask for the vaccine, about to receive the vaccine, to tell the provider if you have allergies. Any form of allergies should be mentioned, and the provider will decide whether the allergy is serious enough to avoid giving the vaccination. For example, if with any medicine or any situation you have developed what is called anaphylaxis, where you suddenly react and your BP drops, you fall down, that is a clear indicator that you should not attempt giving this vaccine. You must tell the provider whether you have fever, because then we have to be more careful. If there is a bleeding disorder, the vaccination is given on the left upper arm in the deltoid outside. It's a very simple injection, intramuscular, and actually the providers have also given the syringe and the needle. It's only 0.5 ml, half an ml, and there is an auto lock so that as the provider gives you the injection, it gives you that 0.5 ml and then it auto locks. So there is no danger at all. But if you have a bleeding disorder or you are on a blood thinner, because this is an intramuscular injection, there's always a little danger of bleeding into that muscle. If you are an immunocompromised person, that means you have any form of cancer or you're on medications that suppress your immunity, you must tell the provider that. If you are pregnant or you're planning to become pregnant during the course of the vaccination, if you are breastfeeding, or if you have received another COVID-19 vaccine, this is information that you must provide to the person, the provider, or the person who's going to give you the vaccination. Who should not get the COVID-19 vaccine? As I mentioned before, anyone who's had an anaphylactic or a bad allergic reaction of any sort, and particularly if it is after taking vaccination. Either an immediate or a delayed onset anaphylaxis or allergic reaction to any vaccine or any injections taken, pharmaceutical products, food items. This has to be, you have to be careful. And these are people who you will not give the vaccine, at least at this stage. Those who are pregnant, those who are lactating mothers should not receive the COVID-19 vaccine at this point in time. Before you ask me questions, I'll quickly mention some of the FAQs, the questions that are commonly asked. Okay, can a person presently having COVID-19, confirmed or suspected, can that person be vaccinated? The answer is fairly straightforward. A person who is positive at this point in time should not come in for vaccination, because when you come, you may expose a lot of other people to the infection. These individuals, it would be better to defer the vaccination, preferably at least 14 to 30 days, at least 14 days after the symptoms resolve. Is it necessary for a COVID recovered person to take the vaccine? We'll tell you what the present state of knowledge is. It is advisable to receive the complete schedule of COVID vaccine, irrespective of the past history of infection. And this will help us develop a strong immune response. And if you want a little more discussion on this, I'm happy to talk about it. If one is taking medicines for illnesses like cancer, diabetes, hypertension, can that person take a COVID-19 vaccine? Yes, certainly. People who have one or more of these comorbid conditions will be considered in the high-risk category. So therefore, we should administer COVID-19 vaccination. What about the possible side effects from COVID-19 vaccine? Okay. The side effects, I can tell you, I took mine 2 days ago. Injection site pain, some tenderness, some lymph nodes might enlarge a bit. You can have a little swelling there and redness, but most importantly, you feel a little tired, you can have headache, but what I had was muscle pain, myalgia, joint pain, feel a little, some chills, a feverishness. But some people have developed nausea and vomiting and fever. which I did not have. How many doses of the vaccine would have to be taken? At what interval? Most of these vaccines are 2 doses, 28 days apart, and need to be taken by an individual to complete the vaccination schedule. The ones that we have here, the Covishield and the Covaxin, are maintained at 2 to 8 degrees. So it's easy for us to maintain it. The ones in the United States are to be kept at -70. And that's one reason why we're not getting that at all, because we won't be able to maintain the cold chain in India. When would antibodies develop? After taking the first dose, second dose, or much later? Okay? Remember this. I've taken the vaccine the day before yesterday. I'm not yet protected. I have to wait till the second dose, and even then I'm not fully protected. The theory as it stands is that the antibodies that develop to the extent that we need for protection will be after 2 weeks after receiving the second dose of COVID-19 vaccine. So back to the basics again. Therefore, let us not tell ourselves the vaccine has come, I've taken a vaccine, I shouldn't be running around now without the mask. I've just taken it off just now for the talk, but otherwise I'm with the mask, especially with my patients. So I know it's not fair to tell each one of you to stay at home and self-isolate. I myself getting very upset about this, but that's point number 1. Of course, clean hands frequently, soap and water 40 seconds or an alcohol-based hand rub. Cover your face and nose with the mask. Avoid touching your eyes and nose because the virus can enter through all this. And I tend to do that all the time because my nose is a little touchy, itchy. I shouldn't do that. And of course, the physical distancing of at least 1 meter, preferably 2 meters, 6 feet from each other. Stay away from crowds. Stay away from poorly ventilated indoor spaces. Have your classes outdoors, no problem. Be very careful when you have your meals because that's when you take the masks away. It's much better not to talk too much and to sit apart, 6 feet apart when you have meals. So wherever physical distancing is not possible, make sure that you have the masks. There are these surgical masks which are even better, but remember to regularly clean and disinfect touched surfaces because these small little bits, the small bits, the virus within it tend to spread. And especially if you have the fan on within a closed surface or the AC on, that tends to go and spread. So therefore, continue following COVID appropriate behavior during and after vaccination. Use your masks, wash your hands, and keep the distance till all of us together win this war and are ready to start life again for God's glory. Thank you so much for your patient listening.
Thank you very much. You've answered quite a few questions that I'm sure many of us had. So that was a smart move to put down those FAQs. Everyone else, if you do have questions, please type them in the Zoom chat. One question has come in from Sumit Tiwari who says, what if after having taken the vaccine, you don't react at all? Is that a good thing or is it that your immune system did not respond?
Now, Santosh, we're doing a study on this. Sumit, what we are trying to find out, these are questions where the answers are not clear yet the world over. But my sense from science is that if you don't have any response or reaction, that means your immune system has not responded well at all. I would think the more the response, the better in terms of the antibody production. And this is based on what we know about the use of vaccines in other situations. All right. Studies are ongoing today as to see what happens with the COVID-19 vaccine. And my guess is that you will find that those who have had a response or a reaction is more likely to have. So, do you know about there are immunoglobulins. The one that comes immediately is called the IG, or the immunoglobulin M. And the one that keeps for long term in terms of protection is called the IgG. So you'll immediately get the response maybe with IgM followed by the IgG. All this together forms the immunoglobulin response. And specifically to answer Sumit's question, I would think that the more the response or the reaction, the better the response. But studies will show you. So to take an analogy from the hepatitis B story, all over the world, we had done so. There we do 3 doses on 0, 1 month later, 6 months later. And then another month later, you check for the immunoglobulin level. And the World Health Organization had said that the count should be 100. Okay, so we were basing it on that to make sure whether we need to give a second dose or a dose later on. But now we know that if you have a response of 10, that is enough. Why? Because the moment the virus tries to get into your system, the body responds. It's called the anamnestic response, because the body has got memory cells that will immediately respond and mount a response to keep the virus out. Okay, so we will soon know whether how long this is going to last. Once you take a vaccine, will it last 3 months, 6 months? And the reason why we are saying that those who've got the infection should also take the vaccine is to help improve the level of immunoglobulins and the response. Is that clear, Sumit?
Okay, we'll move on to Sharon's question. Dr. Chandy, earlier you mentioned that immunocompromised patients should not take the vaccine yet, but then later you said it is important to take the vaccine. So she's a little confused.
Yes.
What should be done? Sharon also says that
Yes.
on Monday she took the Covishield, and having sat through your presentation, she's happy she did it because you validated her decision to take it.
The answer, Santosh, is that today we are trying to be as safe as possible. We are trying to make sure that, because one reaction is enough for the whole country to hear this on social media. And today, only 30% of people in Tamil Nadu are taking the vaccine. Okay, so the more the complaints, or so many people are calling me and asking me, "Oh, what happened to you? Are you So that's why I put up I did a WhatsApp one saying I took the vaccine, I'm still alive. Now, so including my daughter who's in CMC, she called and asked me about, do you think I should take it? So there is a lot of doubt in people's minds. And the reason why we are saying, let us wait. So immunocompromised people should be vaccinated. But today, we are not yet ready to say that because we do not know yet. So at the end of a month, maybe having given it to thousands, lakhs of people, we'll be surer that there will not be a problem for an immunocompromised person. Okay, Sharon?
Good. Sharon is smiling and says thank you. Nina has a question. Why is the age for receiving the vaccine kept at 18? And when will it be made available for children below 18?
Again, Nina, the same reason. As we mentioned earlier, normally a vaccine development takes 5 to 7 years, or at least 3 years. Now we've short-circuited the whole thing and done it within 1 year. So we do not want to expose the children to this yet, just in case this virus has a way of sneaking in somewhere into the bone marrow. We don't know enough about it. So the older people, it's much better for us to take the vaccination. The children, for example, the little ones, their immune system has not developed adequately yet. So there is a worry whether the immune system, maybe does it get modulated? Will something happen? We're just trying to be 100% safe as far as the next generation goes. It's much better that we take it and make sure that everything is fine and to keep the children out. Most probably, my guess is that within 6 months, they will start getting it because so many of us would have taken and we'll find that there's nothing going wrong.
When we went through COVID as a family, Dr. Chandy, our pediatrician was telling us, oh, don't worry about the little children. They'll get it. Yeah, they'll test positive, but they'll get better and they'll be fine and no problem. So I guess they're in a better position.
Was that your experience? They didn't have, normally they tend to have milder infections.
Yeah, they didn't have any. Our younger 10-year-old he continued to bounce around the house. It was like nothing had ever happened. But yes, us older folk. Now, Stella has a question. Like Sharon, Stella had the first dose of Covishield on Monday. She's asking how effective the first and second dose will be. Is this something that we just have to wait and see now that it's happening in real time?
Yes. Stella, did you have any response, reaction? What happened to you?
She'll have to type that message out. Sharon, I can see you, but you have had no response, right? Sharon, I can see your face. No. So she's fine. Okay.
So I'll tell you what happened. I'll repeat what I said. I had a lot of response or reaction. Whole body was aching. I was feeling feverish. I went to work, but I needed to rest a little bit in between. So there was a reaction, there was a response. But it only means that the body has begun to mount a response. It is not as much as we know today, it's not yet ready. We are not yet ready with that one dose to respond adequately to a fresh infection. So what we know so far is that you need a second dose after 28 days and then another 14 days. So we're looking at another 1.5 months after our first dose to be able to go out into the world and say, nothing is going to happen to me. Then we will be doing at that point in time, all over the world, people will be checking the immune levels, the immunoglobulin levels, to see how long it lasts, to see whether if an infection comes, will the body immediately mount a response. We don't know these answers yet. Okay, so we are in the process of learning this. So for the moment, I think it's much better for us to be safe, for us to be careful. Can I ask Sharon, what vaccine did you take?
Covishield. She took Covishield. Yeah.
So that's the only one that's available there now, right?
In Bangalore, yes.
Yeah.
I'm reading Sharon's lips right now.
So Covishield, from what we understand, because it was developed with the Oxford group, and it's likely to have a much better response. Covaxin will probably be safer because it's a killed virus versus the live attenuated. You understood that difference, no? When you give a virus which is attenuated, means you make it weak. There's always a little worry. It's still the virus. Here, with Covaxin, it'll be a killed virus. So we don't know how effective it will be. We'll see soon when the phase 3 results come.
Great. We have a question from Prithvi. Prithvi says, is there any proven medical validation or test to confirm that we have a strong immune system? And if we have a strong immune system, do we need to still take the vaccine?
Absolutely, we have to. Because even with the best immune system, the virus, once it gets in, it can finish it off. So the viruses are so, what shall I say? The problem that's happening in UK, for example, with the variant of the virus itself has a way in which it can come into the body and it can even destroy the immune system or change the immune system. And your response, I mean, you may be a really healthy person with a lot of immunological response, but it still may not be enough to respond adequately to the virus that is coming into you. So, do you need the vaccine? Definitely, you do. All of us need to get the vaccine if we are going to be exposed to the virus.
So this is because our bodies have not seen something like this yet.
That's right. So body is seeing something totally new, something so totally different, and we may not be ready with an adequate response from within ourselves to block that virus.
Okay. Does anyone else have any more questions? We have a few more minutes. And while you type in your questions, Dr. Chandy, the anti-vaccine group is getting louder and louder and almost drowning out people like you who are saying, take the vaccine. What is it that they are saying we should be careful about? Why are they so confident that we should not take it? What is the issue there?
Santosh, can you just rephrase that? Can you just say that again?
The anti-vaccine lobby, the group
Yes.
that says don't take it.
Yes.
Why are they saying don't take it?
Yeah. See, they're just worried, and I don't blame them for the worry. They're worried whether this vaccine, say for example, the one that is being used in the United States, it's a new technology altogether, where they have taken parts of the virus, the mRNA. Is it, I mean, supposing that virus can now become a proper virus inside the body, if it can get into our genes and change our genes. Now, this is all, I'm sure people are seeing these movies that suggest all this. We don't know. So that's the worry. From what we know, these groups have tested all this and found, to the best of their knowledge, that it will not happen. But the doubting mind wonders, will it get into the bone marrow? Will it get into the genes? Will it get into the DNA? Will it change our DNA? Will they make monsters of us? This is the worry. That's why they say, don't take it now. Or they will say, let a whole lot of others try it. And when you find that they're still normal and alive, then we'll take it.
Okay. Satish Rao has a question. Satish says, can a COVID recovered patient who has taken the vaccine still be contagious if he has some virus in his nasal region acquired from recent exposure to a positive patient?
Satish, quite possible. Quite possible. And that is why we are still advising everyone to use masks and to keep distance till we know all this clearly. Because, see, what we don't know is, why do some people get so sick? As I told you, I have 3 patients now in the ward whose lungs are so bad, and I can't see any reason why they are struggling so much while so many of my colleagues got the infection. I have a 77-year-old colleague who got it and came out of it without any problem. Why is it that some of them become sicker? Why do some people, their lungs become fibrosed altogether? No such, we don't have answers to all these questions all around the world, despite all the work that is being done. Therefore, yes, if there is a virus somewhere, if it gets into me, and if I'm not protected, there is still a chance that I'll get infected. Therefore, till things become clearer, and I would think about 6 months, 1 year, we all have to continue to be careful with our masks and the distances.
Okay. Sumit, who asked a question earlier, has another question. He says he and his team were vaccinated on Monday. Most of them have not seen any reaction. Does it make sense for them to get their IgG and IgM tested?
I would think so. I would think so. This was Covishield?
Yes, Covishield.
Yeah, I would definitely, I mean, this is, for us to learn, it's worthwhile. And I'm encouraging our people here to do it, just to know what is happening. When you test your IgG, IgM levels, we get a sense of the response. There are some card tests. There are tests which will quantify how much immunoglobulins. Then, of course, you'll have to do it 1 month later, 3 months later to see whether it's going up, going down. Yes, you would. Yeah, and I think unless you're really keen to know immediately, it's better to wait for at least 2 weeks. The ideal time to test it is after the second dose and then 2 weeks later. Okay, so finish the second dose, wait for 2 more weeks, then test it. That would be the ideal time. And that's the time when you are likely to have the maximum response. We still do not know how long the response will last.
Great. I can see a thumbs up from Sumit. One last question before I hand it back to my dad. When are we, the common people, likely to get this vaccine? When is the rest of the country going to see it happen?
Yeah, as I said, Santosh, all healthcare workers first across the country, and they're seeing more and more coming in now, and they're producing it in large quantities. So I would think the healthcare workers they'll complete it in a month's time. Following that, they will give to those who are above 50 years old. I would think that would take 2 to 3 months, and then everybody else. I'm thinking in my own mind that it'll take about 8 to 9 months for everyone to be, for them to complete the whole country. So October, November is probably the likely time, by which time all of us will be, and we'll be running around the streets again without having to worry about the virus.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze in one last question, Daddy. Hang on. Satish says, knowing that Covaxin has not completed phase 3 trials, would you hesitate in taking Covaxin?
I wouldn't, Santosh. The real reason being, it is a dead virus. The chances of Covaxin causing problems, very minimal. What I don't know is, because it's a dead virus, I don't know how much response there will be. So my worry about not having enough phase 3 answers is more about the efficacy, not about the safety. So you have always with vaccines a safety aspect and the efficacy part. So with Covaxin, I wouldn't worry about the safety. I think it'd be very safe. But how effective it is, we don't know. And that I would worry about. For that, I need, like you just asked, people to check out the immune response and all that and see. That's why I asked you which vaccine. I would expect less response from Covaxin.
Okay. Dr. George, Chandy, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us. May God bless you with health and strength and keep you going strong to be a blessing to many more people. Thank you so much. Daddy, back to you.
Good. Thank you, George. It's been a very helpful session. Thank you, Nalini and all the Timpani teachers who joined us. Thank you for the ACTS staff, Anupa, who coordinated that side of it. And for everybody, we will just thank everyone. Thank you, Santosh, for moderating the discussion. You did well. And George, thank you very much. It's extremely helpful, cleared a number of our doubts, and we're waiting to get out now and get vaccinated. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Santosh. It was a pleasure, privilege. Thank you so much. Let's hope that, as Ken said, we'll all be on the street soon.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Goodbye. Thank you very much. It's been a good session.
Goodbye, everyone.
And Nalini, you want to make any announcements, Nalini?
She's muted, so she might not be able to. Sharon, nice to see you, Sharon.
Okay.
See you, folks.
Let's close in prayer. Let's close in prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the session this afternoon. Thank you for clarifying so many of our doubts. Thank you for the wisdom that Dr. George Chandy has shared and for the opportunity for us to come face to face with an expert and to be blessed. So Lord, help us. Thank you very much for what you're doing in our midst. Continue to keep us in your will and safe and healthy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Amen. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Ma'am. Hello, ma'am. భాస్కర్ గారు ఏం చెప్పాలా
ప్లేస్
అయితే క్లోజ్ చేసేద్దాం
క్లోజ్ చేయమంటారు